Let's ask ourselves a question. Why do people, despite knowing, aside being given every proof of the utter inhumanity that Israel is, it couldn't be any more obvious that it's a white supremacist state? No different than the United States is, no different than South Africa once was, no different than Australia is. But why is it, in face of all the proof that it is, they still continue to defend it? It's important to note that support for Israel from the average everyday people in the West is decreasing. Western governments, on the other hand, are a different story. They've been quite keen to wholly support the murderous actions of Israel. They have their supporters in the public who go along with everything that's claimed. These pro-Israel people who will believe anything you say about Palestine without question, absolutely nothing will dissuade them to the contrary. You can put literal proof that a claim is false, and they'll still believe it. They'll even get angry at you when you show them they're wrong. They will block and deny all proof contrary to what they want to think. There is no denying that Israel bombed the Al-Ali hospital at the beginning of their assault on Gaza. They even admitted it in the beginning. They only changed their story after the public backlash. The Anglican Church came out and publicly said they were threatened by Israel for 3 days before the attack. Video of the bombing shows that there was clearly a bomb, an air-bursting small diameter bomb dropped from an airplane, unique sound and everything. Air Force veterans went on Twitter and confirmed this, people who have dropped such bombs. Yet, these zealot supporters of Israel will deny these basic proven facts. So the question is, why? Increasingly large numbers of people are going out in protest of the ongoing genocide by Israel. Governments of the West are resorting to increasingly repressive measures to stifle dissent. Silent support for the Palestinian people. France attempted to ban all pro-Palestine protests. In Canada, Dr. Abraham Weisfeld has been charged with a hate crime for writing "and a free Palestine." Wessam Cooley in Calgary was arrested and charged with a hate crime for saying, "From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free." Now, eventually those charges were dropped. The Florida chapter of Students for Justice in Palestine was banned by an order from Governor Ron DeSantis. Elon Musk himself has stated that he will punish anyone who says, "From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free." It's pretty highly appropriate that a guy whose entire fortune comes from his parents' emerald mine slavery from apartheid South Africa would defend another apartheid state. All of this disgusting criminalization of free speech and human conscience. Just asking them not to murder innocent Palestinians. That's basic human conscience. The banning of this is being done under the guise of hate speech or fighting terrorism. Why? Because Western governments fear the unpopularity of Israel's genocidal crusade. The Western people's growing refusal to follow along with these governments' positions is something significant. The dissent against official lies used to justify the profit motive, murder, is growing. And there's some pretty good reasons why. The Western propaganda against Palestine is failing, primarily because Palestine isn't scary anymore. For a very long time, the U.S. government has been using fear as a way of controlling public anger, guiding it towards a common enemy. In terms of keeping a social cohesion under capitalism, it has done a remarkable job until the past 2 decades or so. Throughout history, this fear of the other has been the driving force behind social justifications for imperialist conquest, the rejection of any ideologies that would go against the interests of the capitalist class in the U.S. empire. They fear the savage Indian and Mexican that was a justification for land theft. For decades, the big, bad, scary Soviet Union was used for the invasion of countless countries, killing tens of millions of people to save people from communism. The Soviets were a great scare tactic by the US. It was big, it was powerful, and you could portray it as scary. But at the same time, you could say it was supposedly weak, poor, and fragile society on the verge of its own destruction. The blatant contradiction there was obviously ignored. The War on Terror was an invention created to justify US empire expansion in the new century. It appeared almost exactly a decade after the sabotage of the Soviet Union. The nebulous threat of Islamic terrorism was pumped into society with ease after 9/11. There was no big scary monster Soviet Union to frighten people with, given that the US was the sole superpower. The terrorists could appear anywhere at any time. They moved invisible through the US undetected. The fear was used to justify numerous official and unofficial invasions of countries, all of them attacking countries in opposition to US global supremacy, and some of them just for merely not being puppets of the United States. All of it based on the fear of the dark-skinned Arab. Palestine is not scary. You can't make a rational argument that Palestine poses any threat to the US at all. Before this recent conflict, the refugee camps were filled to the brim with people. All of Palestinian society is controlled by the Israeli occupiers. A Palestinian has to get permission from Israel in order to build a house. Palestinian homes are emptied at gunpoint and bulldozed to make way for Israeli settlers at any time. Palestinians are made victims by a massive, outright genocidal bombing campaign. But at the same time, we're supposed to believe they're this gigantic threat that could destroy all of Israel, and according to some, the US as well. Well, it doesn't fly anymore. People aren't falling for it anymore, especially the younger generations that weren't conditioned by Cold War propaganda. The average under 50-year-old isn't scared of Palestine. They're not scared of Arabs, and I think for 3 reasons. 1, people know the justifications for the Afghan and Iraq wars were lies. There were never any weapons of mass destruction, and people know that the claim was a lie. They question the justification for wars now. 2, increased ethnic mixture of America has dispelled much of the racism perpetuated. The Arab has been demystified. He is no longer some shadowy brown-skinned unknown lurking in a faraway land. He's your neighbor. She's elected to Congress. There is no mystery anymore. They're normalized, humanized, as regular everyday people. They're not scary to younger generations. The reduction of the Protestant Christian faith in America, a bastion of fascism. The logic has always been there. Jesus was Jewish, therefore the Muslims are the dirty invaders of the Holy Land, so therefore Israel belongs to the Jews. They could peddle the false claim that the Holy Land belonged to the Jews, or belonged to anyone, in spite of the fact that the Talmud specifically says the Promised Land can only come about as a result of divine creation. Without this Christian fanaticism in the younger generations, Israel and its genocidal campaign gets less support. Mostly what's left now is the baby boomers and a contingent of Generation X who will still support Israel. But their numbers are shrinking. But they still believe. So why are those who still support Israel demonstrating such denial? Because they'd have to admit they're wrong. This cognitive dissidence is a measure to defend themselves from their own conscience. There's no rational reason for non-Israelis to support Israel. Unadulterated racism is probably the major factor in their defiance. They have no choice but to be irrational in order to avoid admitting they're wrong and admitting that their position for decades has been inhuman. They would have to admit they've supported and enabled a genocide. Many average German people denied the crimes of the Holocaust simply because they couldn't admit that their country, their government, the war that they had been supporting was wrong. Eventually, they were forced to see the truth when many of them were taken to the Buchenwald concentration camps to see it. Viewing the horrors of what had been going on is what shook them from their denial. I think we're seeing the same thing here. The supporters of Israel are in denial about the inhumanity of what Israel is doing. These people should be forced to see that inhumanity, the genocide that they have been supporting, and perhaps more importantly, apologize to them.
Thank you for watching. If you like this program, then please head over to my Patreon page and set up a monthly donation. It's your donations that keep this program running. Also, if you would like, please rate, comment, subscribe, and share in various social media.